We're 900 employees less today than we were 8 years ago through a variety of activities that have gotten us there. We are leaner and meaner in that regard. But having said that, as you can see, in many ways, we're more efficient in terms of our primary function, which is to graduate students with marketable degrees. We are working, however, today and into the months to come on what we're calling an operational and organizational modernization plan. What should our system, our 14 universities, our system look like for the next 25 years? Our faculty, full-time faculty, are required to teach 4 sections each semester. We did a survey because we also know that a faculty member can be released from that obligation for a section or 2 based on other obligations that they take on. So if you are elected the president of APSCUF at the local level, you are given 1 of those sections as release time. If you chair some committee at the institution, you can be given, at the discretion of the institution, release time for another section. Now, that's been going on for years, so we thought it was a good time to take a look at that and see how we were doing. We did. We received the surveys back from the universities. It was about an average of 65% of our full-time faculty were teaching 4 sections. It went all the way down to 48%, but the average was about 65%. So our presidents have been looking at that to try to see if, in fact, we are maximizing those very talented full-time professors where we want them to be more than anywhere, which is in the classroom with our students. And the reason that's an important variable is because when they are released for that period of time, many times, or more often than not, they are replaced with a temporary faculty member who receive compensation and benefits, and there's a cost associated with that at the same time. So not only do we want to keep great professors full-time with students who need them, but there is a cost differential associated with that as well.
My district before redistricting included Millersville University, so I still have a very good relationship with them. We met, when I say we, myself and other colleagues in my delegation met with them just in the last couple weeks. And they're looking at a pricing pilot that deals with the undergraduate tuition on a per credit basis. And I'm going to tell you, at least the preliminary data, I was very impressed with that model and the data that they showed. And I wanted to just expand on that. My understanding is I think they might be in the 2nd year of that. I think some other schools are looking at that. Can you just expound on that? Because I saw a lot of advantages to that, particularly for people who are part-time students who need to work when they only need to carry a 12-credit load. Some people, I know the argument on the flip side is now you're, because you can take between 12 and 18 credits, usually the person that's paying, that it's going to cost more. I mean, that's the flip side of the argument. However, from the data that I saw in the analysis, and I'm a statistics and numbers guy, I was pretty impressed with that. Can you just talk about that?
Yes, sir, as quickly as I can. First, Millersville is the first but not the last university to move to what is called a cost per credit system. If you look around the country, members, probably about half the universities in the country, and that's a swag, but probably not far off, use a cost per credit approach. Maybe the universities you attended did, where you don't do an all-you-care-to-eat buffet and pay one price. It's an a la carte. You select the courses you are taking, and you pay an amount per credit for that particular course, okay? And in Millersville's case, they wanted the chance to move to that methodology and away from the one-size-fits-all, whether you take 3 credits or 9 credits or whether you take 15 or 18 credits. Oftentimes, it is the part-time students who subsidize the students who are taking the larger number of credits to make up the difference. They are now, you're correct, in their 2nd year of that. They were part of that review that we alluded to. It is meant not only to increase the real cost for students of what they're taking, but it also has the net effect of having students take a more serious look at how many credits they are taking and the need to graduate on time, lest you face the additional cost of lingering at a university. Some people don't like that idea. They believe that grazing in the vineyard of higher education for a prolonged period of time is the way to go. This does not discontinue that, but students have a better awareness of how many credits they need, which is generally 120 credits to a baccalaureate degree, the cost to get there, and the time necessary to start it and finish it so they can move on to other things. And those are the kinds of things we're beginning to see at Millersville. But we do, to end, have a number of universities that have asked for the ability to do that and are preparing to implement that for the fall of this next year in some cases.
We have a collective bargaining agreement that provides very little flexibility in starting salaries for new faculty hires, that doesn't allow us to address market considerations very well. And that makes us less likely to be able to bid effectively on some of those great candidates.
I come from a system before this one where when you wanted to go out and hire a chemistry professor, you could go out and look for the best chemistry professor in the country and be able to decide how much you were able to pay that particular potential chemistry professor for their experience and their qualifications. We don't do that here. We can't do that here. We have to we're pretty stuck to a schedule, and it does make it hard to vie competitively against all the others in state and across the country for some of the best of the best. It's a very difficult challenge to face when you're trying to get the highest quality faculty that you possibly can. I want to get on the table back to the healthcare issue that our board has taken a very emphatic position on costs associated with healthcare, and recently made two decisions and have implemented those with those we can implement them with. Number one, we have ended annuity in healthcare for all new non-represented hires in the state university system. Those are the me's, those are the hims, those are the folks who are non-represented. Now that has no immediate significant financial impact because you have to be there 20 years to qualify for an annuity in healthcare, but nevertheless, we believed it was important to finally end that process with those that we have the ability to do that with. Number two, we went into our healthcare plan. I'll be a bit glib and tell you, it's not a Cadillac plan alone. It is a Cadillac with fins. It is an extraordinary health care plan, and stack it up against the rest of the country in higher ed, it is one of the best that I've ever seen and some of our experts have ever seen. That's a good thing, okay? And yet we know the runaway costs of health care. And so we went in and took a very careful and calculated look at some of the things that make up our health care plan via contributions from our employees, came up with a list of about 7, I think, changes that had to do with copays and the like, and altered those parts of the health care plan to increase and I'll say potential contributions from employees, because a lot of these things depend on how you use the plan and et cetera. And we have instituted those not only for our non-represented employees, but the other unions that are considered under healthcare, Me Too unions, which means on healthcare, they will accept the same kinds of changes, in this case, that we make. We believe if that were instituted system-wide with everybody, and it has to be through the collective bargaining process in some cases, we could save as much as $12 million a year on those costs alone that could be plowed back into the system.
Does any state funding go to health, safety, and well-being of students and their faculty?
Sure. I'll give you an on-the-ground example. Recently, the General Assembly passed a lot of good legislation on the protection of minors. And most people didn't think that had anything to do with higher education because, gosh, we're all adults. 300,000 visits from minor children to our campuses every year. It's remarkable. Everything from summer camps to duly enrolled students who've not yet achieved adult age, et cetera. And therefore, we then had to go in and we had to decide how we were going to deal with that. The background check issue is a good example of that. We're using our money to do background checks for all of the employees who require background checks to be done. And that comes out of, in some cases, many cases, state funding as a necessity. But we understand the necessity to do that. I come from K-12 where everybody is background checked because everybody is a minor student for the most part. In our world, it does obviously vary, and yet the idea that there might be students, again, 300,000 visits, and some of them are duly enrolled students who've matriculated, and some of them are students who just visit the campuses to see what we do. We pay for those background checks out of state money as one good example.
Okay.
At Millersville, they've made a number of changes to drive out additional efficiencies and better use of dollars to respond to less dollars coming from as revenue. One of the things that I thought was very innovative and has worked out very well is the per credit tuition program. That really has resulted in additional revenue to the college or to the university, and it's somewhat of a pilot program, but to date the outcomes have been outstanding, have been satisfactory. There's been no negative impact on students. In fact, students seem to be better, more savvy consumers in the choices they're making in terms of the courses they're selecting and so on. And the pilot program has met all of its goals, and so I just wanted to get your thoughts on that to see whether the system will continue to be committed. I know that was approved by the system, of course, as you know, but I'd just like to hear your thoughts on progress on that so far.
To the senator's point, it could be a wholesale change at a university, moving from what we have done traditionally, which is a general cost for the courses that people take, same for everybody, and move toward what's called cost per credit. Probably about half the universities and colleges in the country use that methodology. The other half probably more of what we have traditionally done. And what it does is, instead of this sort of all-you-care-to-eat buffet, where in many cases the part-time students are subsidizing the students taking 15, 18 credit hours, you are paying by the credit. Now, some people say, well, that means if you take more credits, you'll pay more money. Yeah, that's true. But it also means if you're taking more credits, you're going to graduate faster than somebody who isn't, so you're going to avoid the back-end costs that are associated with a protracted experience. And because of that, Millersville was the first in, and they marketed this. They are now in their second year of implementation. And as you mentioned, Senator, all of these price points have to come back before the board every year for reconsideration. We call them pilots. Reconsideration to look for disadvantages they may have created unintentionally to the institution, advantages they may have created, or does there seem to be just a general net acceptance of the new program without any great impact one or the other. Why do we do that? Because higher ed is not notorious for trying new things. Higher ed is notorious for putting new things in place and never looking back. If this doesn't work, and the statistics bear that out, we can stop that practice. If enrollments go down because of it, if there's a negative impact on retention or graduation rates tracked to it, we have the ability to stop it. If it needs to be tweaked, we have the ability to reorganize it, but it has to be reviewed on that side every single year to make sure that it is still satisfactory. We did that the first time with about 20 of our price point programs, and even though they'd only been in place for a short time, we've only started this about 18 months ago or 2 years ago, that one in particular was the first out, and we found that it was having either no impact, negative, or positive impact in some of the issues that we reviewed, so they will be continuing that in the fall.
Right.
Markets change, needs change, higher education changes, and that might mean necessary change in our system. What that change will look like by way of recommendations, it's too early to tell, but I do know this. We cannot continue to function the way we are functioning as a 14-state university system with all of the issues that we are dealing with, and that includes the very dramatically changing face of higher education in the country.
Chancellor.
Yes, sir.
You know, my background is supermarkets, so I have to say, why would I talk about supermarkets and talk about universities? But I've got 10 supermarkets doing very well in this one company. We open up another one, and that supermarket is really hurting. It's drawing down the other 10. So what ends up happening, in order to make up for the loss, what I have to do in the other supermarkets is raise prices. So when I raise prices, I start losing sales. And now I'm going to turn it over into the state system. If I have one or two that are really hurting, and that I've got to take dollars out of the other and put into those schools, and in some cases raise tuitions in the other schools. At some point, what's going to happen, we're going to have a hard time bringing students into those schools. And so, are you looking at some of these schools? Like I saw one here, 700 students. The graduating class in my daughter's high school was 700. I just can't for the life of me figure how in the world that school is going to be able to survive. And I know if I was that school was in my area, I'd probably be saying the same thing. You know, I just want you to know, honestly,
Yes,
if you
sir.
can answer
You have put your finger on the hardest part of what we're about to engage in, which is not the dollars and cents or enrollments or academic programs, but it is the emotionalism, the history, and the politics surrounding any kind of a significant change at a university. For the first time in the history of our system, it is one university, and we are headed toward more. We have right now universities that are eating through their operational reserves and are going to run out of operational money. And this system desperately needs to look at our online education, not the individual offerings as much as how we offer online education in what I believe needs to be a much more organized and efficient manner than we do, while still maintaining the integrity of the faculty, the curriculum, the assessments, and the quality of work that comes out of the pipe. So while we're trying to look at the traditional ideas for change, there's also even some of those new ideas. I'm old enough to remember when there was no online education, so it's still new in many ways, but we don't have it right yet. We need to continue to evolve as that technology evolves and our place with it evolves.
We need to have a serious conversation, and it was been touched on here many times, and we danced around the issue. Senator Scavella put a very nice example forward, and you know, I'm not as polished as the rest of my colleagues, so this conversation may become a little unpleasant for some people. But let's take a look at this system, okay? This system is a communist-style system. And Frank, stop me when I'm wrong. You interject here. I want to have a dialogue with you. Okay, this system is designed to be one unit, right? One unit. And the motto is, from each according to each according. That's the motto, right? That's how it is. So what I found a little shocking through many of these dialogues with some of my colleagues is when they become indignant about the fact that money is taken by the central office from a school that has, and given to a school that doesn't have. It blows my mind, because I think, what do you think a socialist style philosophy is? That's what it is, okay? Look, we can agree or disagree whether it's good or bad, but that's what it is, okay? We take from one, we give another. Maybe about 2 years ago, I was summoned to a meeting with the APSCUF professors at Shippensburg University. And they sat there and they were just indignant that how dare the central office take money from them to prop up other universities. And I looked them dead in the face and I said, but isn't that what your philosophy calls for? Boy, you should have seen them. They got real huffy with me after that. But this is the truth, okay? So let's not kid ourselves. Okay, we're not going to shut down universities, right? We're not going to shut down Mansfield. We're not going to shut down Clarion and these struggling universities. Okay, we're not going to do that. So what are we going to do? We need to get serious about what we're going to do. And I know that's what you've been saying about this whole meeting. We have to talk about what we're going to do. And I don't know what the answer is, but the market calls for a shift. Just as Senator Scavella very aptly put, when one of the markets is going down, and here's the other thing too, resentment grows between the universities from the haves and the have-nots. That's just the reality of it, okay? So we have to have a serious conversation about what we're going to do. This system is awesome. I'm a product of this system. I love the state system. I think they put out incredible value at education. I really believe that. I look around and I see the costs of other universities, and you guys do a fabulous job. but it cannot continue, and we can't sit here as senators and pretend that this system is going to work, because we can't continue taking from Westchester and Ship and Millersville to prop up these other programs, okay? That's the one thing. The second thing is, you've talked about it again, doing what the market demands, changing these programs, shelving some of them, starting new programs. Okay, that all sounds great, but we know on the board the fight we're going to have ahead of us. With who? With the union, of course, because every time you try and change the system, the union steps in and says, oh no, you can't do that. You can't shelve that program because that's a professor's job. Okay, well then we need to move the program from this university to here where it can be viable. Oh, we can't do that. Okay, then what are we going to do? I mean, these are the realities that the members of this committee need to understand, that this is what we're facing, okay? So also in that meeting at Shippensburg University, I had this one old dinosaur of a professor just sit there and rail on online learning, how awful it was, and you didn't get the college experience. And I'm sitting there going, I looked at him and I said, sir, you're going to be run over and left in the past. Of course, he didn't like that either. But that's the reality. The world has changed. And we have to change with it. And we need to untie your hands and the hands of these presidents to be able to change with the market, with what the consumers want. I mean, the union fought us on this per credit thing. Why? We're trying to make this system strong so it can serve everybody, and yet we get pushed back and fought at every turn. Well, that's someone's job. We can't end that program. Well, tough crap. So I want to have a serious dialogue. I care about this system. That's why I asked to be on this system's board, because I want to see the system be strong, and I want to see it serve people. It provides a great value, and I want to see it continue well into the future. Thank you for what all of you guys have done to continue to push this ball forward. I'll be a voice for you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would you like to respond? Briefly, please.
First of all, well, I will respond this way, Mr. Chairman, because I think it's important I do. As we take this new look at the system, everything has to be on the table. If we start this process by first determining what are the sacred cows, what are the traditions that cannot be changed, what are the rules and regulations that keep us from making changes that have to be preserved moving forward, you still won't be able to change a damn light bulb in this system without asking somebody special permission to do so. I am convinced we've got to unshackle these people. We've got to let them organize their universities in a way to serve their student population and free them up of many of the obligations that they have been bound to for 40 years that are not only not taking us forward anymore, they are holding us back and in some cases driving us down. Everything has got to be on the table or this will be an exercise in complete futility. What would we want from you all? We need you to be partners. We're going to be going through a very emotional set of conversations. We're going to be going through a very political set of conversations, unintentionally, but it's unavoidable. We're going to need advocates who are willing to stand up and say, if it is the best interest of the system and ultimately the students who will be served by this system, then we've got to put that emotionalism and that politic aside and do what's right. We've all got to be singing off of that page. As I was in a meeting the other day, and I'll stop, I was in a meeting with some Council of Trustee members, and when we presented their budget, they said, gee, do we really need 14 universities in this system? Now, I know over their head was a little white bubble that said, well, I know we need ours, but do we need those 13 as members of our system? And that would be replayed 13 other times. Everything has to be on the table, and people need to be ready to have adult conversation about where this system goes, or we will all be wasting our time. And we'll be having those conversations. We will involve people in those conversations. We'll be looking at best practice around the country. As I mentioned, Georgia right now is merged. They have 34 state universities in Georgia, Mr. Chairman. They are merging 2 of them every 18 months. They have a process and a practice they've put in place, and they are merging 2 campuses, 2 universities into one every 18 months, and they'll do another 2 coming up very soon. I'm not suggesting that's the way they're doing it, and that, can you imagine the guts? 2 sets of school colors become 1 set of school colors. 2 mascots become 1 mascot. Unless it's puppy, monkey, baby, you're going to have to find a creative way to get people to satisfy the emotionalism of moving from a badger to a wolverine. I'm being silly to make a point. Yeah. These are emotional and political issues, but for not just the survival, but for the flourishing of our universities, we've got to engage in those sorts of conversation, and everything has to be on the table to do that.
I will remind all of us, not just you, that everybody has to be part of the conversation. And we can rail against certain entities or groups, but they've got to be part of this, because they are a key factor in making sure that our students get the education that they need. And I will remind you too that, you know, we had the opportunity not too long ago, for example, to appoint a retired professor to the Board of Governors. And that didn't happen for whatever reason. And I was disappointed in that, because I think there's some expertise there that we are perhaps not bringing. We don't always want to hear everything that people bring to us, but that's going to be part of this process too.
Average number of hours that a faculty member teaches in a week.
Our faculty, our full-time faculty are required. Yes, our full-time faculty are required to teach 4 sections per semester. So if you line that up with credits, each of 3 credit course is a section, if you look at it that way. There are exemptions. People can be removed from that 4-section obligation for serving in other functions up to 2. So somebody, the one I use is if somebody, because it's the easiest one that comes to mind, if somebody is elected as the APSCUF president at that institution, they are given one of those 4 sections off to see after those duties. If somebody is the chair of a curriculum committee, they can be given relief from one of those 4, but 4 is what they are required
And
to have.
how would that average out for hours per week?
What do you think that
Typically
17
it costs
hours?
About 17 hours, including office time.
Yes. Yes, because
17
everyone is,
hours, I'm sorry, including off time?
no, 17 hours.
I didn't hear what she said.
No, it's okay. 17 hours, including required office time for the professors.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Drew, you're going to get a little bit different education today. I have a different spin, but listen, I appreciate your being here, and I appreciate your comments. But you made one comment, and it was very interesting, and I'm glad you told us that young people feel their pockets are being picked. And you are exactly right. And you are in the building that is doing it, and we're doing it good. And so I have a lot of questions, and my questions, just a little bit of my background. I'm in the waste business, and I'm not a college graduate, and spent a semester at York College taking business classes. But I've learned by fire. But I will tell you, in my life, this is the most important thing, and this is the financial statement. I don't know if you've seen a copy of it, but it's there's a firm in Harrisburg that does it, and I've looked through this extensively. So I think maybe I'll be able to shed some light on my spin from a financial side. Chancellor, I appreciate all your comments, and I want to be careful that I think sometimes these meetings get into a micromanaging situation, and honestly, in my world, I don't appreciate people that micromanage. I'll just give them the keys and say if they can do it better, do it. But I'm concerned. The bottom line is, and I think you have started the dialogue. We are out. We have no more runway here. And I will tell you that where I'm coming from, I will not vote for any tax increases. I will lobby my colleagues that we cannot, number one, the people out on the street, the average blue-collar family in Pennsylvania cannot afford more school taxes, real estate taxes, personal income, sales tax, and the list is endless. So a couple things that I've, through the conversation, and Rich Alloway, Senator Alloway, touched on this. I'm a believer if you have schools that are technically, in my world, underperforming or unprofitable, they should be closed, and they should be closed quickly. And we don't need a task force, and we don't need to micromanage or analyze and become caught up in analysis paralysis. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a 40,000-foot view. And I'm going to start running through your financial statement. In the chart you showed me, the average contribution in your system is 15%, and if you use the U.S. average, it's 28.2%. If you were to factor, and that is very accurate, the private sector is typically 25 to 30% in that range. And at my company, we run in the 25 range. If you were to use 28.2, the national average, against your healthcare contributions on the part of the people in your system, it's $42 million. And so, frankly, I don't think, my personal opinion and what I've seen, in overall throughout the whole state system, that the contributions that are being made are not anywhere near probably what Drew's parents are possibly paying a lot more. I know people in the audience, so I think it's something that we have to understand. You're also challenged because you have roughly 11,000 unionized employees. If you take healthcare costs that you're talking about and your wage increases and possibly your pension costs, your compensation costs are going up at least 10% a year. This is a trend that cannot continue. It's unsustaining. You gave us a list of all new hires since July 1st of 2015 and compensation. Is it possible to get a list of all people in the system? Because I was looking through here and I didn't see the January 15th, and I looked through and I was looking for the Drew, I didn't know if you knew that the swim coach at Westchester made $420,000 last year. I didn't know if you knew, so you might want to consider swim coaching as your new career. But I'm very curious, I want to look at the compensation because we have to understand all the moving parts. What would the average college professor earn? What would his W-2 earnings be? An average.
The full, because there's two levels there, the full-time professor, and I knew this off the top of my head.
97 is the average.
Is it 97? $97,000 a year is the average for a full-time professor.
That would obviously be skewed with the new hires, which are, they're in, a lot of them are in the 50 to 60 range, the new hires. So let me ask you, Chairman Brown, of a salary of 130, help me out here. It's been a long day. So what would the annual amount be if they retired at 25 years with a salary of 130?
Post-tax, 87.5% of final average salary.
Okay. So Drew, for your education, so the professor that's in your classroom that's getting ready to retire after 25 years, that maybe is making $125 a year, he's going to retire with $100,000 a year for the rest of his life. That's where your pockets are being picked, because while it's a system was set up, we cannot sustain this. And there are some people in the state system. The top two people get $477,000 and $455,000 respectively. So it's great you're here today. I'm sure you have learned a lot, and there's a lot more to learn. But you're right, your pockets are being picked. So I would start wearing pants with zippers on, because your wallet's about ready to be taken away from you. So thank you. But we will follow up with these.
Yes, sir.
With the
And Senator, that's one of the reasons that we say when we talk about reorganization and modernization, that's why I use the phrase, everything has got to be on the table, not just some things, or it won't work.
At 97 grand, these are the people that are working 17 hours a week. Wow. Can I get a sign-up list here going in the Senate? I bet you get quite a few applicants.